Get the most out of your vehicle with GM genuine parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
Welcome to the Rocker Skating Podcast. It is an emergency podcast because we have the Grand Prix assignments. We finally have them. So happy Grand Prix assignments reveal day to those who celebrate. I'm going to have a little coffee because I've been up for a while. So coffee and Grand Prix assignments for you today. All right. First off, as I had just put out a video yesterday about Grand Prix selection procedures, they did change, and luckily I caveated it with saying that they might change. It wasn't a lot of big changes, but there were some critical things that changed that made people a little bit confused about why certain things happened the way that they did. A quick recap of these changes here. So part of it was they cleaned up some of the language. As you heard from me yesterday in that video, I'm not very excited about some of the precision or non-precision of the language. And so they cleaned some of that up, and that clarified some things there. One of the big things was that Olympic medalists got a specific mention, which has not been in the rules for Grand Prix selection. All of the Olympic medalists were guaranteed 2 spots, whether or not they were at the World Championships, because the selection procedures have been very World Championship specific for a very long time, and they continue to be. And so that was one of the big changes. So one of the other big changes was the seated skaters rule, and that caused a lot of confusion this morning because there were seated skaters who were facing off against each other who in the past would not have, because they used to be in groups. So 1 through 3 couldn't face each other, 4 through 6 couldn't face each other. That is no longer the case. You can do that now. What they did with the seated skaters, it's still the top 6 from Worlds, and then whoever needs to then backfill depending on, like Yuma Kageyama taking the season off or Kaori Sakamoto retiring. Those 6, they are placed in Grand Prix with the idea that travel is optimized, and then also to optimize the number of World Championship medalists at each of the events, but across all of the disciplines. So the first thing that is part of the criteria is that if you are in a country with a Grand Prix, you get priority for the host country. And then the second one is they split up the seated skaters into continents so that only one overseas trip is necessary. And then they tried to then optimize for not having back-to-back Grand Prix that make you then have to go from one continent to another. And then lastly, they try to basically have equal number of medalists in the 4 disciplines as much as possible. That's probably not mathematically possible given all of the permutations, but they try to do that as much as possible. So that was the really big change with the seated skaters. The last big change was the comeback skater rule and the returning and split skater rules. So the comeback skater rule used to be that you looked at the world's placements for the last 10 years. Now it's back to only the last 4 years of World Championship placements. The split couple rule and the return skater rule that is for injuries and any other reason for people to take an entire season off. Now it's for the top 10 at Worlds over the last 3 seasons versus before it was a top 12 at Worlds. And so that actually effectively took out Katie McBeath, Daniil Parkman, Emily Chan, and Spencer Howe. They all finished, I think, 12th at Worlds over the last 3 seasons. They're now not eligible to be part of the split couple rules, so you didn't see them in the Grand Prix. And then lastly, the alternate list got further clarification. So that will be helpful for skaters and federations to understand. There's just a little bit more of a prioritizing, and it will still be part of the whole ranking of the alternates to be able to bring them in when withdrawals happen. Okay, so that was the rule changes for the selection procedures. Let's talk about the actual lists here. There were some things overall that were of interest, at least of interest to me. Skaters that we thought might have skipped the Grand Prix or taken the season off or retired. Now, I'm going to caveat this with saying that these lists are still, it's the preliminary list. Anything can happen over the next few months before the Grand Prix actually start. So, we've seen skaters who either retired or split or whatnot, who initially got the Grand Prix assignments, but then ended up withdrawing because of that. So the skaters who are in this, right? Ilya Malinin, Alyssa Liu, Amber Glenn, Jason Brown, that was a surprise to many, Junwan Cha, and Jimmy Ma. Like those skaters, we thought there was a possibility that they might have skipped the Grand Prix. Ilya Malinin had mentioned that, taken the season off, or even retired. So all of them are currently on this Grand Prix list. The ones who are not on the list, who are notable now, the stalwarts of the last 4 seasons in ice dance, the ones who were on the podium almost all the time at Worlds, Chalk and Bates, we already knew were going to not be on the list because Evan Bates had told me that he was taking the season off and has no idea what to expect in the future. But the other two we didn't know what their status was. Piper Gillis, Paul Poirier, not on the list. We do know that Piper Gillis is now on the coaching staff of the coaching team that coached her and Paul. And so this may be an indication of things. And Charlene Guignard and Marco Fabri were saying, at least, or teasing us that they were going to be training for the next season, and they are not on this list. So whether those actually mean anything in terms of retirements, we don't know. We won't know until they officially say something about it. But it is to say they are not going to be on the Grand Prix. Others who are not on the Grand Prix, the Shibutanis, which many of us expected, but they have not given any sort of official indication that they were retiring. They never retired in the first place, 8 years ago. Deanna Stellato and Maxime Deschamps, another one who is not that surprising given all the things that we've heard about Maxime Deschamps wanting to retire. Ellie Cam, Danny O'Shea, not on. We didn't know what the status was of the two of them, and they are not on the Grand Prix. One other pair that was eligible for getting an automatic spot was Lucrezia Beccari and Matteo Gorise, who we don't know what their official status is, but we do know that Lucrezia Beccari just had surgery. And so potential that they may not be skating anymore, but we don't know. Another couple of other ones from the singles events, Brady Tennell, we don't know what her status is either. She has said that not a retirement yet, but she's figuring out what her future looks like. Luna Hendricks, which I think if this were a couple months ago, you may not have been surprised that she's not on the Grand Prix. But the last couple of weeks or so, she has been posting herself doing jumps. So she's not on the Grand Prix, and we don't know what her status is either. Roman Sadowski and Boyang Jin have not said anything officially again, and they are also not on the Grand Prix. So those were notable absences, and we'll see in the next months, weeks if anybody makes any sort of announcements based on the fact that now we know they're not on the Grand Prix. All right, the other one is that there are no Russian athletes. So Adelia Petrosian and Peter Gumenik would have been eligible for a Grand Prix spot based on their season best from last season. And the ISU sent me a statement that said, quote, "The topic of participation of skaters from Belarus and Russia was raised at the ISU Council meeting on Saturday, June 13th in Tenerife. Further analysis is being undertaken and will be presented at the next meeting of the Council in the coming weeks." So they are not on the Grand Prix. As of right now, Belarus and Russia are still banned from International Skating Union competitions. But we will see what happens in the coming weeks in the next council meeting. And finally, no real surprises in terms of new pairings, new surprise pairings. None of the new pairs that have been announced are in the Grand Prix. A new ice dance team is on the Grand Prix, however, Marjorie Lajoie and Jean-Luc Baker. Again, no real surprises there, and no real surprise pairings that have popped up because of these Grand Prix assignment announcements. Okay, a couple of under-the-radar skaters that got spots who I loved seeing. Hannah Herrera and Ivan Kopta, who is the reigning world junior bronze medalist. They're making their senior debut, and they'll be at France and Finlandia. So they got 2 spots. Gabby Izzo and Luke Meyerhofer got 2 spots as well, Cup of China and Finlandia. Now, Gabby Izzo, for those of you who are followers of U.S. skating, had been at the Grand Prix as a single skater. So her last and only Grand Prix was in 2022 in Great Britain as a single skater. Plazas Fernandez got 2 spots. Reitan Mayarov in ice dance got 1 spot. They got Finlandia trophy. They're sort of home Grand Prix. Not quite home, but, Nordic's home. Pegena Koval, also 2 Grand Prix. They're also the reigning world junior bronze medalists. They are going to be at Skate Canada and Skate America. Again, Marjorie Lajoie and Jean-Luc Baker getting NHK, and well, I am looking at that Skate Canada TBA spot. We'll see if they end up getting a second Grand Prix event this season. A couple of other ones that I'm very excited about. Saki Miyake finally getting her due. She's going to be at Skate Canada after not getting a spot last year when a lot of us kind of thought she deserved one. Mako Yamashita getting a Grand Prix spot for the first time in 7 years. The last time she was on the Grand Prix was 2019, and she was at NHK Trophy in 2020, but that one doesn't really count because that was COVID NHK, and that was more domestic than anything. And then Seo-Jin Yoon from Korea, the junior coming up to senior, getting Grand Prix de France. We expected Yu Sung and Yu Jae Kim to get the assignments. We did not expect Seo-Jin Yoon to get an assignment this early, so it was great to see her. And then finally, Kirill Marzak getting 2 assignments. That was expected based on the Grand Prix rules, but I know he was on pins and needles hoping to get these assignments. I'm not going to go through every single Grand Prix. We have plenty of time to do that over the next few months. But I want to just kind of go through some of the fields that I am very, very, very excited about, because some of these fields are packed. They are jam-packed. And especially the women's field. In almost every single Grand Prix, these are amazing fields. And I'm so excited to see these like multiple fields where you have like 6 to 8 skaters who could medal. It's kind of nuts. Grand Prix de France. We start off strong. Yuna Aoki, Ami Nakai, Rion Sumiyoshi. Rion Sumiyoshi loves the Grand Prix de France, and she is back for more. Nina Pinzarone, Gabby Daleman comes back to the Grand Prix at Grand Prix de France. Anastasia Kubanova, Sarah Everhart, and the debut of Yusong Kim and Seo-Jin Yoon. Oh my God, that field is already crazy. And then a week later, you get Skate Canada, and the women's field there, you have the debut of Mao Shimada, you have Saki Miyake, and you have Yu Jae Kim, all making their Grand Prix debuts. Samu Delkina, Jia Shin, Petrokina, Pezzetta, Isabel Levito, Ida Karhunen. Oh my God. Another one where you just have so many skaters who could make it to the podium. And then Skate America and NHK, also big, big, big fields. At Skate America, we actually have 3 of the top 5 from the Olympics. Like, that is nuts. Amber Glenn, 5th. Ami Nakai, 3rd. Alyssa Liu, Olympic champion. All 3 of them will be competing against each other in Skate America at Everett. And then you add Sofia Samodelkina, Rino Matsuike, Nina Pinzarone, the world bronze medalist, and Yu Jae Kim. I mean, another one. NHK is another fantastic event. Yuna Aoki, Mone Chiba, Cheon Kim, Jia Shin, Young Yu, Sarah Everhart, Amber Glenn, Maddie Skeezes, Yulia Sauter. Oh my God. Like, the women's events are just going to be insanely good. So excited for those. The men's event, there are some that are going to also have this kind of hype. And we start off so strong again with Grand Prix de France being a big, big field. Olympic champion Misha Shidorov is going to be at Grand Prix de France, and it's going to be him, Sasha Selevko, Adam Xiao, Kaomura, Mingqiu Saw is making his Grand Prix debut there. Jacob Sanchez, Sota Yamamoto, Nikolai Memola, a really, really talented field. Cup of China is also then going to have Misha Shidorov. Misha Shidorov's getting up at those big fields. Kaomura, Mingqiu Saw, and Jacob Sanchez, all of them are going up against each other again. And this is for Cup of China. And then there's Nika Gatse and Denis Vasilyev and Junwan Cha, who, again, some people had expected maybe she was going to take the season off. Maybe he was going to retire, but he is on the Grand Prix list. NHK Trophy. NHK Trophy is going to be the place to be. Oof. Ilya Malinin, the continuation of Jason Brown, another Junwan Cha appearance, Shun Sato, Rio Nakata, Danielle Grossel, Kevin Amos, and Lukas Brycki. Big, big field there. So those men's events are going to be very exciting. Now, dance and pairs are going to be interesting in different ways because the singles events were a little bit less decimated over the off season. And so dance and pairs is where you really have the partially the changing of the guards, but also the formation of new pairs and new dance teams. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in those fields. Again, for ice dance, NHK Trophy is going to be a big one because the debut of Lajoie and Baker, although they could get another assignment before that, we'll see. But Zingas Kolesnik, Smart Deke, Carrera Ponomarenko, Turkila Verslis, and more teams who are going to be on there. This is going to be, with the exception of Fournier Baudry and Cicerone, this is going to be a Grand Prix series of ice dance teams that who is going to sort of come up from the 3rd to 8th to 10th ranks at the World Championships and who's going to surprise this season. I think that's going to be very interesting to see. For the pairs, it's going to be a crapshoot because lots of returning big pairs, right? The top 10 from Worlds will be at the Grand Prix this season. But the question then is who's going to actually make a splash here? And the pairs fields are kind of varied. But for me, the Grand Prix de France pairs event is very exciting. Metelkina Barulova, Zhang and Huang, Pavlova Sviatchenko, and the debut of Herrera Kopta. So, if you look at these fields, I would say NHK, Grand Prix de France, and some combination of Skate Canada and Skate America, those are the Grand Prix that have the maybe the overall deepest, most exciting fields. All right, well, that was the overall overview of my first impressions of the Grand Prix assignments from 2026-27. Excited to see how this goes, and also don't be surprised again if we see withdrawals, if we see things that happen over the next couple of months before the Grand Prix season actually starts, because it does happen. We can see the season sort of peeking its head around the corner already, so excited for the new season. That's it for today, and you've heard a lot from me over the last few days, but we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.